A night that would never end. Imagine driving home late at night, exhausted but relieved that the school year is finally over. You're on an empty rural road, the kind where there are no streetlights, just endless darkness stretching in every direction. You realize you've made a wrong turn, but that's fine, you have your phone, and your parents are just a call away. Now, imagine that as you're talking to them, trying to find your way, something happens. You hear a noise. You exclaim in shock. And then, silence. This isn't the start of a horror movie. This really happened. Brandon Swanson, a 19-year-old college student from Minnesota, vanished without a trace on the night of May 14, 2008. His last words before the call was abruptly cut off? OS. And that was it. No one has ever seen him since. There were no clues, no body, no evidence of a struggle, just an abandoned car, a desperate search, and a case that has baffled investigators for years. How does someone disappear while actively speaking on the phone? What did Brandon see that night? And most importantly, where is he now? This case remains one of the most haunting disappearances in modern history. Some believe he fell into a river. Others think he was abducted. And then, there are those who whisper about something much darker, something beyond our understanding. This is the story of the vanishing man. The road to nowhere. Brandon Swanson had every reason to be celebrating that night. It was May 14, 2008, and he had just finished his first year at Minnesota West Community and Technical College. Like many students, he spent the evening with friends at a small gathering in Canby, Minnesota, a town about 30 miles from his home in Marshall. By all accounts, Brandon wasn't intoxicated beyond control. Yes, he had been drinking, but not to the point of being heavily impaired. His friends later confirmed that he was aware and capable when he got into his car to head home shortly after midnight. The drive from Canby to Marshall was supposed to be simple. It was late, but he had taken this route before. What happened next is where things start to get strange. Sometime after leaving Canby, Brandon made a wrong turn. Instead of heading directly toward Marshall, he veered off course. He didn't realize it at first, and by the time he did, he was already lost on dark, desolate backroads, dirt and gravel paths with no clear road signs, no traffic, and no lights except for his car's headlights cutting through the night. Then, at 1:54 a.m., his car came to an unexpected stop. He had driven into a ditch. It wasn't a major crash, Brandon wasn't hurt, and his car wasn't seriously damaged. But it was stuck, and despite his efforts, he couldn't get it out. He tried reversing. He tried accelerating. Nothing worked. The car wasn't going anywhere. Brandon wasn't panicked, at least not yet. He pulled out his phone and did the logical thing. He called his parents. His father, Brian Swanson, answered. Brandon explained the situation, saying he wasn't far from the small town of Lind, just a few miles from Marshall. He asked them to come pick him up. Relieved that their son was okay, Brian and his wife, Annette, got out of bed and drove toward Lind, flashing their headlights as they went, just like Brandon had instructed. But when they arrived at the location he described, there was nothing there. No car. No Brandon. No sign of anyone at all. They called him back. He answered. He was confused, they should have been able to see him, he insisted. He described his surroundings, dirt roads, open fields, the occasional fence. He told them he would start walking toward the lights of Lind and they should meet him along the way. So, his parents waited in their car, keeping their eyes on the road ahead. Brandon stayed on the phone, describing his progress as he walked in the darkness. For nearly 47 minutes, the conversation continued. He told them he was walking along a gravel path. He mentioned passing a couple of fence lines. Everything seemed normal, until it wasn't. At exactly 2:30 a.m., in the middle of their conversation, Brandon suddenly shouted, "OS." Then, the call went dead. His parents tried calling him back immediately. No answer. They tried again. Still nothing. They called over and over, desperately hoping to hear his voice again. But Brandon Swanson was gone. The desperate search begins. For a few moments after the call went silent, Brandon's parents sat frozen in their car, staring into the darkness. The shock of his sudden exclamation, "OS," were still ringing in their ears. What had happened? Had he fallen? Was he hurt? Had something, or someone, grabbed him? They dialed his number again. No answer. Again. Voicemail. The feeling of unease turned into full-blown panic. Annette and Brian Swanson spent the next hour driving up and down the roads near Lind, calling his name out into the night, flashing their headlights, desperately hoping to see their son emerge from the darkness. But there was nothing. The night was eerily quiet, the vast rural landscape stretching endlessly with no sign of movement. As dawn approached, the Swansons made the decision no parent ever wants to make. They called the police. The investigation begins, but too late. When the police arrived, their response was frustratingly indifferent. They assured Brandon's parents that it was common for young adults to wander off, and that he would likely turn up soon. Maybe he had gone to a friend's house. Maybe he had just needed space. Brian and Annette knew better. Their son wouldn't just disappear without calling them back. Something was wrong. It wasn't until later that day, hours after Brandon had vanished, that authorities finally launched a search. The first clue was his car. Brandon had told his parents he was near Lind. But when police found his abandoned Chevy Lamina, it wasn't anywhere near Lind at all. It was 25 miles away, in a completely different location, near Taunton, Minnesota, in an area surrounded by vast farmland, fields, and scattered gravel roads. This discovery changed everything. Brandon had been completely disoriented that night. The roads looked similar, the landmarks blurred together in the dark. When he thought he was near Lind, he was actually miles away in the middle of nowhere. Now the question wasn't just, where did Brandon go? But rather, where had he been walking toward that night? What happened after the call? Investigators launched an extensive search, covering over 120 square miles of farmland, ditches, rivers, and wooded areas. Tracking dogs were brought in. They picked up Brandon's scent near his car and followed it along the gravel roads, just as he had described to his parents. The trail led toward the Yellow Medicine River. Then, suddenly, the scent stopped. No sign of Brandon. No footprints leading away. Just, nothing. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Some investigators believed he may have fallen into the river and drowned. The problem? No body was ever found, and search teams scoured the river multiple times. Others believed he had been attacked by an animal, though that wouldn't explain why his call ended so abruptly. Then, there were the darker theories. Had someone been out there in the fields that night? Had Brandon unknowingly walked into something he wasn't supposed to see? Could he have been taken? The only thing certain was that, despite exhaustive searches, no trace of Brandon Swanson was ever found. Theories and the unsolved mystery. Brandon Swanson's disappearance has baffled investigators, armchair detectives, and paranormal enthusiasts alike for over a decade. The circumstances are terrifying: a young man, lost on the phone with his parents, suddenly vanishing with no explanation. No body, no clues, no logical reason. So, what could have happened? Theory 1, the river tragedy. One of the most common theories is that Brandon fell into the Yellow Medicine River and drowned. The tracking dogs led searchers to the river's edge, and his last words, "OS," could indicate he slipped and fell into the water. However, there are serious problems with this theory. The river was thoroughly searched multiple times, with no body ever recovered. If he had drowned, his remains should have surfaced or been found downstream. Additionally, searchers found no footprints, drag marks, or disturbed vegetation near the riverbank. So, if he didn't drown, what happened? Theory 2, hypothermia and disorientation. Some believe that Brandon, exhausted and confused in the dead of night, may have succumbed to hypothermia. May nights in Minnesota can be bitterly cold, and if he wandered too far into open fields, he could have collapsed from exposure. The issue? His body should have been found. Search teams combed the area for weeks. A person doesn't just disappear without leaving a single trace. Theory 3, foul play. Could Brandon have been abducted? The eerie silence after his final words is unsettling. No struggle, no rustling, just an instant, dead signal. Some theorists believe someone else was out there in the darkness that night. Perhaps a passerby picked him up under sinister circumstances. However, there were no reported vehicles in the area, no signs of a fight, and no evidence of foul play. If someone took him, why would they have left nothing behind? Theory 4. The paranormal possibility. And then, there are those who believe something stranger happened. Some claim Brandon stumbled into something beyond human comprehension. The suddenness of his disappearance, the way his scent trail just stopped, and the way his call ended without struggle, it has led some to whisper about paranormal forces. Could he have seen something in the fields that night? Could something have been watching him? Of course, there is no evidence to support this, but there is also no evidence to disprove it. The aftermath and a family's pain. Brandon Swanson's family never gave up. Despite the police's initial reluctance to take his case seriously, the Swansons fought for change. They pushed for Brandon's Law, a piece of legislation requiring law enforcement to treat missing adult cases with the same urgency as missing children. But while the law changed, their personal nightmare never ended. To this day, Annette and Brian Swanson still don't know what happened to their son. They never got a goodbye. Never got closure. They are still waiting for answers. What do you think happened? Brandon Swanson's disappearance remains one of the most chilling modern-day mysteries. A young man, walking toward safety, speaking on the phone with his parents, and then, gone. No evidence. No logical explanation. How does someone simply vanish? Let me know your theories in the comments below. What do you think happened to Brandon? And if you enjoy true crime and mysterious disappearances, be sure to like and subscribe for more stories that will keep you up at night. Because sometimes, the scariest stories are the ones that are real.